I'm Anita Sherman, and I'm the editor of the Culpeper Times. And we are in a collaboration with Culpeper Media Network to do interviews of area veterans to be shown on the Culpeper Media Network site. Today is Thursday, September 22nd, and in the studio with us today is George Everett Taylor of Culpeper, and we're going to be talking with him. This interview is happening at 105 North Main Street at the Culpeper Network Media Studios. All right. Welcome, George.
Thank you.
This is great to have you with us today. All righty.
Great to be here.
Okay. So now, let me ask you this. Are you native from Culpeper? Is Culpeper your home? You're born here, or?
Yes, I was born here a half a block from where I'm living now,
Okay.
29 South, on August the 6th, 1922.
1922.
And I've spent my entire life here with the exception of my being in World War II. I became a man, 21, on the way to France during World War II.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit, how you got into that. Did you enlist? Were you drafted?
No, I was drafted. I got caught at the 18 to 45 draft. I was 20 years old.
You were 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And did you have a choice which branch of the service you went into, or they just drafted you into the Army?
At that time, they were placing where you were needed.
Okay. Okay, so that's how you got into the Army. Now tell me this, because I know you come from a large family. Did you have other siblings that were also drafted?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I had four brothers in the military. It was three of us in World War II, overseas at one time. My oldest brother got caught before the war, before Pearl Harbor. Back in those days, the President of the United States, when he put out a draft in 1940, and if you was in a certain age bracket, you must come in and get 12 months of military. So my brother went in, my oldest brother got drafted in then. He went in June of 41 and was supposed to get discharged June 42 for 1 year. But the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor on December the 7th while he was in, and he pulled 5 years.
Wow.
But he was in Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and I took my training in Taunton, Massachusetts. After 6 weeks, we moved into the Boston Army base, and he would be downtown doing MP duty every night. So I saw him every night.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Well, that was good. Okay.
Until I went overseas.
So you were drafted, and you said you were 20.
Yes.
Okay. So what was that? So where did you do that training then? In Massachusetts?
In Taunton, Massachusetts, 18 miles north of Providence, Rhode Island. In fact, when we left here to report for active duty, we had to report for Fort George Meade, Maryland, on March the 31st, 43. So they kept us at Fort Meade 3 days processing, getting our medication, needles, and clothing. But on the 4th day, made up our troop train, loaded with 913 men. And we didn't know where we were going. That train headed north. And we rode all day long. We went through Delaware, into New York, and Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut. And we hit Rhode Island. It was getting dark. Soon we went into the state of Rhode Island. The train stopped in the woods. And we were in Massachusetts, Taunton, Massachusetts. That's where we took that basic. After 6 weeks of basic, before we left, one morning the officer came on the field before we began to go hiking and said, when we going to Boston Army base next week, but before we leave, I need 2 men from each company to go to school in East Boston when we get to Boston for carpentry. I was the first guy to volunteer because I wanted to get off that field. I was getting tired of walking every day, hunting
Sure,
every
so
day.
you
So my job was every morning we were living at Boston Army base. We'd walk up to the base about a few blocks, catch a boat, and go up to East Boston for school. Stay up there till 3 o'clock, catch a boat back to the base. And we done that until I went overseas. So that's all I done in Europe was carpentry. I was a company carpenter. And naturally, when I came home and it was discharged, I took my GI Bill of Rights training and became a building contractor. My brother done the same thing. He came in from Bougainville, Pacific area. So we joined together, Taylor Brothers. We built houses here in Culpeper and Fauquier, all the way to Marshall and Gainesville, all over Fauquier. We were building houses in Fauquier County when they hired the first building inspector, Randolph Carter. He was the owner of the Warrenton Planing Mill. He used to come by the job to inspect our work. He said, if the Taylor Brothers build it, he won't have to get out of his car. He wouldn't get out of his car. He just signed his roster and go on to the next job.
It's a real testament to your work.
We built the first dozen houses on Rappahannock Street. We built over 100 for Gill Implement, a machine placed on the old bypass. I know a lot of people in Warrenton.
Well, you know what you've done here. You've jumped way ahead. Because what I want to know is when you went over to Europe, so you were sent over to Europe. So when you're done with when you were done with your basic training, then where did you go after that?
We went to Boston Army Base, Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Because we were in the state of Massachusetts. Camp Miles Standish is only 35 miles south of Boston. It's down next to Providence, Rhode Island. But after we finished our bases, they moved us to the Army base for technical training, which I was going to school. But the men, the 913 men, they were doing technical training in the Army base. But I was going to school, so naturally, when I got overseas, all I done was carpentry, plumbing work, and we built theaters, number one, we put floors in the tents. We built theaters. We built shower stalls.
Wow.
We built anything the company needed, we did.
So when you went overseas, what country then did you end up in?
We sailed out of New York on October the 13th, 1943, on the Queen Elizabeth, the world's largest luxury liner.
So you went over on the Queen Elizabeth?
We did. We had private compartments. Each man had his own private compartment. And we went over unescorted during wartime, but we were traveling so fast on a zigzag trail the enemy couldn't torpedo us because we were changing course every so many minutes. And we were moving so fast. And 5.5 days later, we landed in Glasgow, Scotland. And after being in Glasgow for 6 months, every night in Glasgow, you could see the fireworks going off down London. The Germans was bombing London. So we, on the 1st of May, 1944, we moved down to Wales, England. We were trained in Wales for 30 days. At the end of 30 days, they gave us our last meal. Next morning, June the 2nd, 1944.
44. Now we're getting close. We're getting close to D-Day now.
We sailed out. We laid out 4 days in the English Channel waiting to get killed, waiting for D-Day. Well, they had to wait for the weather. But during those 4 days, the 8th Air Force was stationed in England for 24 hours a day overhead was covered with airplanes. They'd be flying over, bombing the Germans, and flying back, reloading back to England. But they kept us covered.
What was that like? What did that feel like when all of that bombing? Did it make you, I'm sure, apprehensive?
Well, we were wondering what will happen next. But we went in on D-Day by 2:30 in the afternoon, and we had to crawl over dead American soldiers. And the water was red with American blood. See, when they on a landing, they take in on the LST. They drop that front gate in about 3 to 4 feet of water. So you have to walk the water. You have to keep your rifle above your head and get in best way you can. We lost men. They got drowned.
So there were just there were just waves of these men trying to get on the shore.
I stayed on the Omaha Beach from June the 6th until the 16th of November. But we dug in. We had made a bunker, a 6-man bunker, dug a hole in the ground, put logs, sandbags over the head. So we had our bunks and long side walls. So we was well secured underground. But,
you were underground.
Yeah, but the next day, after landing on Omaha Beach, I met my first cousin from Culpeper, Virginia. He was with the 920th Air Base Security Battalion. His company came in on D-Day to protect the beach at nighttime, to protect us at nighttime, keep the enemy. Every evening, they would fly balloons up so the enemy couldn't come in with airplanes and strafe the beach. So they protected us for 2 weeks. Then they went back to the United States.
So you actually had a chance to see one of your cousins.
Oh,
there,
yes. But I even met my oldest brother later on in France. He came down to see me. He was the one that was drafted in before the war, before Pearl Harbor. I had seen him in Massachusetts, Fort Devens. He was stationed at Fort Devens. But he came over to France, and he came down to see me on my birthday.
I'm just having it's very challenging to think about all of these men living in these bunkers on those beaches. I mean, it's amazing that you made it out of there. There were so many that were killed.
Oh, yes. But see, when you get in a position I was in, every individual was looking at for his own life. You have to think about yourself and try to live. So I did.
Did you, I'm assuming you had friends there, or you made friends while you were there with some of your buddies?
Mm-hmm.
Did you keep in touch with any of them later, or when the war was over, did it just all break up?
No, I had a guy to call me from Detroit, Michigan 6 months ago. I remembered the name, but I couldn't remember his face. But he looked like, but anyway, he knew me. And he told me, he gave me his name, and he's from Detroit, Michigan. But he has to be 90, he was 91.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a World War II vet, you have to be 90 years old.
Right. There's not that many of you. There's not that many of the World War II vets that are left.
No.
So what was life like there in the barracks? I mean, what was your routine every day? You were being fired on, or you were firing, or?
Well, see, I was, by being company captain, I had people taking care of me. They were guarding me and all. I didn't have to look out for my life wholly, because they were in charge taking care of my unit, my small company, my small section. We had a service section, the carpenters and all, and we didn't have to fight for ourselves after got over the beach.
All righty. Now let me ask you this. This was during the 40s. Did they have the soldiers segregated? Were all of the African American soldiers in one place or not? Or were you? I'm just curious how that was, because we know that was a different time.
I'll tell you what happened with me. The Army was segregated when I went in, but I sailed out of Le Havre, France after the war, coming back to America, December the 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, 1945. And I came back on an integrated troop transport. Took us 13 days from France back to New York, which we went over in 5.5 on the Queen Elizabeth. But we were on a slow troop transport coming back. Okay, the Army was integrated before I left France coming home. So I came back on an integrated ship. Number one bunk was a white guy. I was number two, up 6 bunks high. So this guy and I, we became close friends. We ate together, stood in line together, we hung out together all the, and this guy was from Virginia. Okay?
Oh my goodness.
And we were out there 13 days before we got to New York. When we got to New York, they shipped us down to Camp Kilmer for 3 days. My buddy and I bunked side by side for 3 days. Next morning, they shipped us to Fort George E. Meade, Maryland for our discharge. We got our discharges together. Well, he was from Virginia. I said, man, I'm not going to wait for the shuttle bus. Let's get a cab. We got a cab from Fort Meade over the 12th and York Avenue to Trailway bus station. We both get on the same bus headed home. But when I got on the bus, before the driver pulled off, he said, Mister, you're going to have to go back to the back. I was interviewed from London, England. I told the guy that interviewed me here in the Culpeper, I told him he was in London. I said, I turned black. I was free and white for 27 months in Europe. But when I came back to Washington, D.C., got on the bus, I turned black again, and my buddy stopped up front. And I haven't seen him since, because when I got to Culpeper, he had gotten off. But we separated in the nation's capital, so what did I go overseas and put my life on the line? Suppose I got killed over there. Mm-hmm. For what? I didn't have no country. I did what I had to do.
Well, that's it. You went over there and served. Now, so now, did you spend most of your time then in France? Were you in other places, or was it pretty much in France?
See, in France and Scotland and those places, a man is a man. Color doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Well, I tell people, since I've been back here, I said, London, England is one of the largest seaport cities in the world. And they have, when those ships come in there to London, they bring sailors of all color. Mm-hmm. They bring people, humans. So I was a free man in Europe for 27 months. But when I came back to Washington, D.C., I turned black again. I had to go back to the back. And I haven't seen my white friend since. Because he wasn't on, when I got to Culpeper, he had gotten over somewhere.
Yeah, he got off somewhere else, you said.
Yeah, between here and D.C.
So you were involved for almost a little over 2 years then.
Yeah, well, I was in the military 33 months altogether.
Now, when you came back, did you go into the reserves or anything?
Did I do, pardon?
Did you go into the reserves?
Oh, no.
Because when you were done with it, you were done.
I wanted to get free.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my discharge, and I went in. Well, all people knew back then it worked, so I went in company business for myself, building contract.
But you learned those carpentry skills in the Army.
I told people every day, I'm glad I went and I'm glad I got drafted because it gave me an occupation. I wouldn't have been a building contractor if I hadn't gone in because they sent
And your
me,
brother as well.
Yeah,
I think
they
you
sent me
mentioned
to
your brother as
school.
well.
Yeah. So they made a future for me, a life for me.
So you came back to Culpeper. Now, when you came back, was there any kind of celebration or anything, or you pretty much just came in on the bus? You said
No celebration. No.
And you came back to Culpeper, and then you started. Now, when did you get married? You were married after?
I came back to Culpeper, but I didn't get married until I didn't know my wife. I didn't. I didn't get married until 7 years. I was 23 when I got back to Culpeper. I was 30 years old when I got married.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
And it was soon enough because I think I met the best woman in the world, and I thought so much of my wife, I took her to Montreal, Canada on our honeymoon.
For your honeymoon.
I tell people every day I had to take you to Paris, France, but I couldn't. I know Paris like I know Culpeper, but I couldn't drive to Paris.
So you came back and then started your profession with building.
Mm-hmm. Well, we worked for another contractor under training, and after 3 years, we went in. My brother and I went in business for ourselves. But back in those days, the house you built had to be plastered. There was no drywall. The house I live in today is plastered, and there wasn't any subcontractors. You had to do your own plumbing, your own electric, your own everything. You had to be your own contractor. But today, there's no one responsible. Everybody does his thing. They have a plumber, they have an electrician,
Yeah, back in those days, you had to do the whole thing.
Yeah,
you had to do the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were overseas, you talked about how horrific that was, really, when you landed on Normandy.
Mm-hmm.
But are there any other memories from during that time that affected you, or which had the most impact on you?
Well, when we lost our battalion commander going in, that was really hard on the men because he was the element. We didn't think he would. He took us to training, a nice man, but he was the first one. Then we lost a few more other guys, but everybody took him as a father. He was a white guy, but he respected his men. He thought a lot of his men. He was wrapped up in his men. He lived for his men. But they were back in the good old days.
Yeah, so that was quite it was just quite an experience. I'm
Yes.
glad you survived it.
Well, yeah, and I wouldn't take anything for my career in the military because I wouldn't have been a building contractor if I hadn't gone in the military.
Mm-hmm.
I might end up being a farmer. Right? See, like I said, I went to Warrenton, and your town you live in now, I know a lot of people in Warrenton, Virginia. That's where the millionaires were.
Now, tell me this. When you've come back, have you involved yourself with different, military groups or kept in touch with, like American Legion or any of that when you got back?
Yeah. Well, I joined the VFW. I'm a lifetime member here
VFW. Mm-hmm.
of VFW. We have a lovely post there, and we are quite strong. And we have big dinners. I enjoy the military still. I enjoy the military. Then I go to the VA hospital. They take the best care of me.
You were talking about that you've gotten good care from VA hospitals.
Yeah. I'm so glad I went to Martinsburg, West Virginia. I used to go to DC. And when you get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, the waiting room be full of winos.
I remember a few years ago when you were given that congressional award when Eric Cantor was still in office, and you went down there for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before I went down there, I got a call from Cannon's office. Say, Mr. Taylor, when you come down for your citation to the War Memorial, you will be interviewed by the Clover Hill High School history class and its teacher.
So they kind of threw that at you.
Well, I'm glad that they came up with that because I was ready for them. See, because I took my physical in Richmond before I went in the military. And Richmond sent me in overseas. In other words, I passed my physical in Richmond, and 7 days, they gave me a 7-day leave, but I was in Richmond on March the 24th, 43. March the 31st, 43, I had to record the train here in Culpeper. And there was 7 of us from Culpeper area reported for active duty at Fort George J. Meade, Maryland. And we was in Maryland for 3 days, but on the 4th day, they made up this list of 913 men. A troop train, and we didn't know, we headed north. We didn't know where we were going.
And I imagine that all those young men, you were all about probably around the same age.
Yeah. Oh,
19,
yes,
20.
they were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that was an experience for those young high school kids to interview you.
I when I first went in the military, I wondered how in the world the military get people from all walks of life and make men out of them, make soldiers, sailors, or whatever, military personnel.
Because you're all pretty young.
Yeah, but they see. Then I begin to think and realize you don't change the military; they change you.
Well, basic training back then, I mean, was it pretty fairly rigorous?
Oh, yes.
And they teach you how to use a rifle and all that?
Oh, yeah. But they have a rule they go by, and you don't change it. In other words, they'll break some of the roughest guys. The guys, how in the world can they get a guy from D.C. or Philly or New York and make a soldier out of him? But
they managed to do it.
Oh, yes. They have men to train you. Yeah, So America, they give you you're well trained when you're qualified when they ship you out overseas for overseas duty.
So you felt that you were as prepared as you could be. I mean, clearly you didn't really know. I mean, having never experienced that, what you were in for over there.
No, but I thought I was one of the best military guys. I knew my job. I knew the military. America trains its men, its soldiers.
So what do you think about the military now? I mean, what advice would you have for young people? Would you suggest that they go into the military?
Okay, when I left Europe coming home, if you were a European-born native, you must have 2 years of military. When you got 18, you must have 2 years of military training. If we had that policy back here in America, we'd have better young people.
I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, we'd have better young people. They'd make a real man out of you. You don't change the military, they change you.
No, I was wondering. So now how many children do you have?
I have 3.
3.
I have 1 daughter and 2 sons. My daughter, she's the baby, and She was the only one who took after me. She's an architect.
Ah, okay.
But
That's
when
interesting.
she graduated from, well, she went to Culpeper High School and A2, but she went to Marymount in North Arlington, Virginia, all women's school for 1 year. Then she transferred after 1 year at Marymount. She went to University of Maryland. So when she graduated from University of Maryland, the governor of Maryland, Horace Glendening, had a job waiting for her. She worked with Glendening in his office as long as he was governor. And when they built the Redskins Stadium, she and her team done all the inspecting on the stadium. So she and her husband got 2 free passes for the opening game. You wouldn't believe it, after 29 years at Park and Plain in the D.C. area in Maryland, she moved to St. Hosea, California a year ago.
Oh, my.
So she called me night before last from California. She was here for Father's Day. She's here, and she might be here for Christmas. Because her husband, he's from New York. So.
And what about your sons? Are they in this
My
area?
oldest son, he lives in Leesburg, Virginia. He's a computer science major. He graduated from the James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. My youngest son lives in Atlanta, Georgia. I can't get, he called me last night. I can't get him out of Atlanta. He and his wife is from Florida, but they stay going. They don't have no kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Where's your wife?" I asked him last night, "Where's your wife working?" She's in London this week. See, last year they worked every Monday morning. They'd fly up to Boston, Massachusetts. She'd work in Boston all the week. He'd rent a car and drive up to New Hampshire. So one Monday morning he got in New Hampshire. His boss sent him to London, England. And he called me 2 months ago. He was in Russia. But they both travel.
Oh, but that's...
But they live in Atlanta. Near Stone Mountain. When my wife was living, we used to go down there 3 or 4 times a year.
Well, as we're sitting here today on this Thursday afternoon, and reflecting on your past and your experiences in World War II, is there any kind of message that you'd like to leave for future generations, people that might see this interview years from now?
Yes, I'm living in a different world. I came down Culpeper in 1939. I drove a delivery truck for a meat market, Weaver's Market, 2 doors down the street from this building. I delivered groceries to every family. I knew every family in Culpeper. I told a guy yesterday, I think it was, 60 years ago, we Culpeper natives thought we needed a hospital. So I knew the first president, T.I. Martin Sr.
Oh, my.
In fact, his son, T.I. Jr. was funeralized here last week. I noticed in the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I knew the family because I delivered groceries to T.I. Martin.
And I remember when the start of that community hospital.
And when they built the hospital, I served 10 years on the board of trustees at Culpeper Hospital. I knew the nurses. I knew Dr. Henson and his wife came here from London. I knew all the doctors. We paid for that hospital. Today, our young people turn it over to UVA. I tell people today, T.I. Martin, the first president, would turn over in his grave if he knew what was happening to Culpeper Memorial Hospital. I knew all the old people. I knew the French Slaughters, the clerks, Miss Helen Jeffers, the town lawyer, the county clerk, G.W. Mitchells. I knew all those people. See, back in those days, you meet people, well, by being a delivery driver.
You're going to meet everybody.
Yeah, I knew everybody, but now I don't know no one. I remember when they built the first subdivision in Culpeper.
Which one was that?
That was Lesko Boulevard. U.S. Randall built that It was the first subdivision. Before then, everybody lived in Culpeper. And I delivered groceries to everybody.
So maybe if there's any kind of message, it's so, this whole thing about connections, making connections and keeping those community connections. Now with technology, it's all become, Facebook and social media, and people forget how to have a one-on-one conversation. But you've seen a lot of changes.
It's an entire different world here now. It's not like it was when I grew up.
Well, there's more people, and you've talked about some of those changes.
Yeah.
With the hospital. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you'd like to share with the viewers out there?
I like the atmosphere. I like Culpeper because I was born here. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of good friends. I walk on the track, Meadow Park track.
Oh, you told me that before the interview, that you're still walking every day.
I was down there this morning, and you'd be surprised. I mean, people, they have love for you. They'll stop and talk with you. You meet people on the track, women and men. And they see the scalp.
I was going to say, so you're proud of your service.
Yeah. So I guess I'm different. Maybe it's a lot of difference between me, my generation, and today's generation. Oh, yeah. You know that it's been a lot of changes. But I can go in any restaurant with this cap on, Holiday Inn, eat my meal. People from out of town, New York, Chicago, Detroit, New England, they'll pick up my tab. They'll come by my table and question me.
Well, that's a pretty good deal then, see?
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that.
Sure.
They are saying thank you for your service. Mm-hmm. So...
well, I think that certainly the whole, through the ages, the whole war climate has kind of changed. We've seen other things after World War II. There was Korea and, of course, Vietnam and Iraq and things. But World War II, I think, the big wars, when you talk about the big wars, World War I and World War II,
I tell people every day, if we hadn't fought World War II, you'd be speaking Dutch here today.
That's right.
Because the big three, they got together, they stopped, they didn't kill Hitler. Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt. We had a big, overseas in France, we had a big parade and a special memorial service for President of the United States when he passed. Because I was in Europe when he passed.
Oh, so you were...
Yeah, I was in France.
But you haven't, once you got back, you didn't have any desire to do any traveling or to go back?
Well, I guess I'm a very poor guy. I couldn't afford it. You would be surprised, but about to go out at Walmart one morning, this guy, white guy, he saw this World War II cap.
Okay.
He said, my dad fought in World War II. He began to question me about what unit I was with and where was I, so forth. He said, I went over to, he said, you was on Omaha Beach. I said, yeah. He said, I was on Omaha Beach a month ago. Wait a minute. Let me go to my car. I have a bottle of sand, a little souvenir. He got it off at Omaha Beach. I have it now.
Oh, my goodness.
People, it's strange. And I never seen the man before. But he saw this.
Well, I would suggest you keep wearing that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All righty.
It's a lot of fun answering questions. I like to talk. I'm like my mom. My mother was a great talker.
Well, you have a lot of history, a lot of memories.
Yeah.
I mean, you were over.
Yeah. Now, I don't forget nothing. You wouldn't believe it. I can remember when
Well, you remember a lot of dates. You've reeled off a lot of
I can
dates
remember
here.
the first day I started elementary school.
Oh, come on.
I lived in the country. We had to walk 3 miles.
Oh, this thing of walking miles to school. Okay.
And the first year, it was 2 ladies, 17 years old. They were graduating that same year. That winter, before they graduated, I didn't have no gloves. I was just starting in September the 1st, 1928. I walked between those 2 young ladies, put one hand in one pocket, one hand in
Oh,
In other words, they looked out for me. You know, people had a lot of love for you, for young people, for kids. I was 6 years old.
you were 6 years old because you said you were born in 22. So
Yeah.
20, yeah, you'd have been 6
Yeah,
years
I
old.
was 6 years old.
Oh, my. That's a wonderful story.
But I've been blessed. I tell people I'm just 94, but I've never been in the hospital a day in my life.
And that's what you've told me. You are blessed, very
I
healthy.
am. I'm 94, but I'm still trying to live.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is that. I think a lot of it is attitude.
Yeah.
A lot of it is that, and you got a good attitude.
Sure.
All right. This has been a real privilege to chat with you today,
Well, it
George.
was nice
No,
chatting with you.
I've enjoyed this very much. I've
But
enjoyed this very much.
I'm glad you did. I have enjoyed it myself.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I take care of my mother. She loved to talk.
You-
So I'm representing my mom.
Oh, that's sweet. All right. Well, again, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And again, this is Anita Sherman. I'm the editor of the Culpeper Times, and this is a series that we're doing in collaboration with Culpeper Media Network. We hope that you enjoy it and that you'll join us for the next one.